Make it plain.
MIP.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson. Get woke.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another special edition of Make It Plain as we are live here tonight. And this, as we get ready, these are the final days, the final countdown before Election Day. We are here. And who better to have but a dear friend with us? He, as many of you know, was the Secretary of Labor in the Obama administration. Before that, he was also Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights in the Obama administration. He has been a journeyman when it comes to public service and in the areas that impact so many people across the spectrum. He is now the chair of the Democratic National Committee, and he's been working harder than anyone. He was working on this before we had a ticket, before we had nominees, when we had, about 12 some odd candidates. And so I thought it would be a good idea to have him come on and make his closing arguments. We're going to be hearing the candidates make their closing arguments. Why not hear from our friend, Tom Perez? Tom, welcome back to Make It Plain, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mark. It's always a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to have you. What's your expression, Tom? How many days until the weekend?
Exactly. We got 4 days till the weekend. And as I speak to you now, I apologize that this isn't the best backdrop. The room raters wouldn't give me the best rating on my room. But I'm here in Las Vegas. I've been traveling everywhere, Florida, Colorado. I'm going to Texas this weekend. Who'd have thunk the weekend before the presidential election that we'd be in play in Texas, but we are. And so it's the enthusiasm's everywhere. We've got to sprint through the tape here, as we say, and that's exactly what we're doing.
So, Tom, give us your assessment, especially in the battlegrounds and what's going on. And as you do that, there's a story that has broken this afternoon. Supposedly, this is from Bloomberg. And, you know, they don't name people, but they make these claims. But everybody's been texting me about it and people are worried. It says Biden aides see warning signs in Black and Latino turnout so far. Senior officials on Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's campaign are increasingly worried about insufficient Black and Latino voter turnout in key states like Florida and Pennsylvania. Is that true? Are people concerned? Are we having problems with that, Tom?
Well, I actually think we're in pretty good shape. When you look at the aggregate data, African Americans are voting basically in par with their percentage of the population. And then when you start drilling down, like, let me give you an example. Michigan, at this point in time, 4 years ago, African Americans were 8% of the votes. Now, 12% of the early votes are Black Michiganders. So that's a 50% increase in the vote share in Michigan. Moving North Carolina, I think it's over 20% of the early vote are Black North Carolinians. Florida, I don't have the data in front of me, but what I did know about Florida is what's really interesting. We tend to focus on Republicans and Democrats. There's a very large population of no party affiliation, and the no party affiliation group of folks is younger and more diverse than in 2016. And the African American NPAs, as they call them, Mark, tend to be Democrats. So we don't know who someone votes for. We know what their party affiliation is in Florida. And The bottom line is, for both Black voters and Latino voters, we have a lot of work that remains to be done, not only in Florida, but across the country. We leave nothing to chance. We've had record turnout, without a doubt, in the aggregate. At the same time, the reason we've been running programs and talking to people and investing in places like Michigan now for 3 years running is we knew that we underperformed in Wayne County, Detroit. We knew we underperformed in Flint. I mean, look where Barack Obama and Joe Biden are going to be this weekend. They're going to be in Detroit. They're going to be in Flint. And that is a recognition of the importance of the Black vote in Michigan. President Obama was in Miami a few days ago. We recognize the importance of the Black vote down there. And so, I'm never satisfied until I know we have won. But what I do know is we've had a really aggressive set of investments in communities of color. And when I look at the Biden coalition, it is a really diverse coalition, both racially and, frankly, ideologically, because there are a lot of Party of Lincoln Republicans who understand that the Party of Lincoln is dead. And so we're going to continue to build out that really wide-ranging coalition.
Wisconsin, and particularly Milwaukee, how you feeling about that? I know that was another place 4 years ago, and a lot of suppression tactics going on there and elsewhere. How are we looking there?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We have over 1.6 million votes that have been cast in Wisconsin already, and by the time early vote ends this weekend, I'm going to guess that we're going to be at 2 million votes that have been cast in Wisconsin. And the investments that we made in, I think, Milwaukee are really paying some dividends. We started organizing in Milwaukee in 2017 when I became DNC chair. We did the convention in Milwaukee because we want to send a message at every turn that we are not ignoring cities like Milwaukee. There have been a number of really important players in the broader ecosystem that have been very active. I have a friend who's the president of IAF, which is National Faith-Based Grassroots Organizing Organization, and their Milwaukee affiliate has done a lot of work with the Bucks. And so the Fiserv Center where the Bucks play is an early vote site. In April, only 5 out of the 180 precincts were able to open. And that's because they couldn't get poll workers. This is a really interesting data point, Mark. They needed 1,000 poll workers to run early vote and election day vote. They ended up, because of such a groundswell of enthusiasm in Milwaukee, they ended up with 6,000 applications for the 1,000 poll workers. So every single polling site is open on election day. And in addition, they have a cushion so that if people don't show up, they've got other people to fill the void. And they've been able to open all the early voting sites, which is critical. And so you look at the early voting returns, and they're very heavily skewed to Madison and Milwaukee. So that bodes well. And I'll tell you, we didn't pay enough attention in 2016. We got to just call it, speak truth to power in Detroit, Milwaukee, and elsewhere. And we're absolutely not repeating that mistake again. And we started those investments, as I said, in 2017. We didn't wait till right before the presidential.
You feeling, and you're feeling pretty good about Pennsylvania?
Well, Pennsylvania, again, the vice president has spent a ton of time there, and nearly 2 million ballots have been returned as of October the 30th, which is more than a tenfold increase from this point in 2016, when there were roughly a little over 200,000 people had voted. And what's really interesting is that of the 1.4 million Democrats who had cast their vote as of October 20th, over a quarter of them didn't vote in 2016. So we paid a lot of attention to getting these early, getting these sporadic voters out. And in Florida, we've had also good fortune with getting voters who didn't vote in the last election out. People often say, well, vote by mail is just people who would have voted on election day. So you're not really expanding the pie. That's actually not accurate this year. I mean, we really have been expanding the pie, and that data I just gave you in Pennsylvania, that's pretty remarkable. A quarter of the first 1.4 million registered Democrats that voted didn't vote in 2016. So, Pennsylvania is going to be close. And I mean, here's the punchline for all of the listeners. We can go battleground state by battleground state. These are going to be close. I tell my team, don't get on the polar coaster. Don't look at the national polling. National polling really, it's not what's going to win the election. And state by state is what you have to look at. And we've got a lot of really neck and neck states, and that's why we're working so hard to turn people out. But and here's my final thought here, and then take any additional questions. Is we're playing offense. We've got multiple pathways, Mark, to 270. The most linear pathway, you could argue, is to simply replicate in 2020 what we did in 2018, which is we swept all the statewide elections in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If we were to do that in 2020, win those 3 states, and hold serve in all the other states, that would be enough to get us to 270. But we have so many other pathways, whether it's Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, Iowa, Arizona, Texas. We've got multiple pathways to 270, and we are competing there. Again, I'm gonna spend the last weekend of the campaign in 6 or 7 cities in Texas, and I'm excited to do that.
That's good to know, and that's good news. Senate, feeling good about that as well, right? And first of all, what about Georgia? Are we likely to get both Ossoff and Warnock to victory in Georgia?
Well, those are, again, 2 jump ball races, and what I think your listeners and viewers should understand about those is there's actually a chance that in the Ossoff race with Purdue, if neither of them gets to 50%, then they have a runoff. And the same thing with the Warnock race, which is, again, there's 5 or 6 candidates in the race there. And if no one gets to 50%, you go to a runoff as well. So, I think both candidates are running very, very strong races. And you watch the arc of Dr. Warnock. 3 months ago, he was in the high teens, and now he's been in first place by a comfortable margin for some time. And the question is, can he get to 50% by election day? And if the answer is no, then there's a runoff with the top 2. And that's the same thing in the Ossoff race. There are candidates that are drawing, upwards of 4 or 5%. So if nobody gets to 50, then we have to have a runoff there. I hope that's not the case. The good news about the Senate is it's a first cousin of what I just said a couple minutes ago in the presidential. We have multiple pathways in the presidential to 270 electoral votes. Similarly, we have multiple pathways to a Senate majority. The number of races genuinely in play is remarkable, and it continues to expand. And one example of it continues to expand is Mike Espy. We've been working in Mississippi since I got to the DNC, trying to invest so that we can build capacity for statewide candidates. And Secretary Espy is running a very spirited campaign. It's been below the radar screen, but if you look at who's raising the money, he's outraised his opponent something like 5-1 or 6-1 in the last 3 months or so. And he's got a shot. And for him and for Doug Jones, the formula is the same. If you get black voters out and they vote in the numbers that we hope and think they can, then both of those candidates can win their races.
Yeah. And that would be a major victory as well. Okay. In terms, we'll stipulate, Counselor, as we all know, that it is of enormous historical significance and finally recognition of the role and the backbone Black women have given the party to have Kamala Harris on the ticket. I think we all agree on that. I'd like you, though, considering that African-American men have been disproportionately targeted in 2016 and even more so in 2020, Tom, for voter suppression and disinformation. Tonight, what's your message to Black men who are being discouraged from voting, or even worse, targeted for disinformation that Donald Trump is actually going to be helpful to African-American men? What would you say to that demographic of Black men like us who need to know the truth?
Right. Well, I would. There are two different sets of things I would say to Black men. Number one, elections are about whether candidates keep their promises, and then whether the challenger has made promises that he will keep. Let's look at Donald Trump for a moment. He said, "What do you have to lose?" Not just to Black men, but to Black voters. We actually know the answer to that now, Mark. 4 years later. Your lives, you look at COVID, disproportionate impact on African Americans and other communities of color. You look at job loss, and again, the unemployment rate. Barack Obama, Joe Biden did such a good job in reducing African American unemployment, and now it's way back up again. You look at George Floyd and the civil rights pandemic that we're confronting, and you see once again that this president is all talk, no action. What did he call African, nations? Shithole, I think he called that. I mean, the absence of respect for the African American community. That when I sit there in the debates and hear him say, "I've done more for African Americans than any president except Abraham Lincoln," I mean, I just want to throw up, because that is just so insulting. And so when we look at this, and by the way, when he wants to take away your health care, that disproportionately touches communities of color, because communities of color have disproportionately benefited from Medicaid expansion and Obamacare. This is the guy who started, or was one of the original actors in the birther thing with Barack Obama, and started using it with Kamala as well. I mean, it's shameful. So that's one half of the answer, but that's not enough. What is Joe Biden going to do for you? And I think Joe Biden has outlined a really, really important agenda. And some of his agenda addresses the entire Black community, and some is very much, I think, will disproportionately help Black men. But getting a handle on COVID helps everybody. And again, when a crisis has disproportionately touched communities of color, then you need a leader who can get a handle on it. And that is Joe Biden. You need a leader who can address issues of police accountability. Look at what this president does in the aftermath of all of these shootings, whether it was George Floyd or Breonna Taylor or whomever. It's always us against them. His attorney general said, "I don't think Minnesota needs to be investigated," the police department there in Minneapolis. I don't know what he's smoking, but as someone who led the Civil Rights Division's police work, my goodness, the main defendant in the George Floyd case had something like 20 plus uses of force. There's clearly no early warning system to root out officers who had problems. And the notion that the Trump administration attorney general can say, doesn't look like a problem to me. I mean, it's just amazing. So when you look at the agenda on healthcare, it's an agenda that's going to help African Americans. When you look at the agenda on police accountability, it's an agenda that will help African American men in particular. When you look at the plan to end cash bail, that disproportionately will help low-income individuals and, in particular, Black men. You look at his efforts and proposals to decriminalize marijuana and also to do, to go at and expunge sentences so people can have opportunity. You look at the economic opportunity platform, his investments in small business, his investments in capital formation, building entrepreneurs in the Black community. You look at investments in vocational education, the apprenticeship programs that I have worked with have been really good opportunities in Black communities. I did a program, Mark, with the former mayor of Philadelphia, Michael Nutter. We invested in apprenticeship programs for high schoolers in predominantly African American schools in Philadelphia so that they could become computer coders. We took their fluency they have with their smartphone and we're translating it into a lifetime skill. These are the types of investments that the Biden administration is going to make that are going to explicitly help Black men. And so these are the conversations we're having. We have an initiative called Chop It Up, and we've been having authentic conversations with Black men. And I've participated in a number of them. And I've always appreciated the candor. And a lot of Black men are saying, I hear the talk, but I don't see the impact. And I get that. What I would say is, look at what we're doing. Look at what Barack Obama did. Look at how we reduced the unemployment rate. Look what they have done. Look at what this Donald Trump says. Don't forget, this is the birther guy. And so, right. You just have to look at the entire record. And so we're fighting feverishly. And there are double-digit gender disparities with Black men and Hispanic men. Both of them strongly support Joe Biden. That is the fact. But there are double-digit disparities, and we are very mindful of that, and that's why we've been very, very, I think, strategic. My press secretary Brandon Gassaway has been a leader in our Chop It Up program, and I think those programs have been really, really helpful. We've had a number of athletes and others who participated so that we can really have these conversations. Joe Biden's, his choice of Kamala Harris tells you a lot about what he thinks of inclusion and opportunity in the 21st century in America. Look at the cabinet of Donald Trump. You have one African American, 0 Latinos, 1 Asian American who's there because she is Mitch McConnell's wife. That's his commitment to diversity and inclusion. That is woefully insufficient.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I would just add, and let me too commend Brandon and his leadership on Chop It Up. I've been honored to participate as well. One of the things we discussed, let's do just one other statistic before we leave that subject. Much of the focus when it comes to those of us who are Black men is the criminal justice system. And Trump and McConnell have rammed through over 200 judges, Tom, and how many of them look like us? I don't think any of them do, as a matter of fact. So, that's a number that I think people need to keep in mind as well. My brother, this is it. 4 days. You've been working hard for this moment. Let me turn the floor over to you to make your closing argument. Ladies and gentlemen, the closing argument for all of us and for you to share with others. 4 days out, election day is coming.
Well, Mark, we're a nation in crisis. We have multiple crises at the same time. We've got a pandemic that has resulted in over 225,000 deaths, 9 million cases. We have an economic collapse unlike anything we've seen since the Great Depression. This president is the first president since Herbert Hoover in the Great Depression who's going to preside over net job loss during his presidency. Hasn't happened in almost 100 years. We have an economic crisis. We have a civil rights pandemic. You see in the aftermath of George Floyd, you see in the aftermath of so many other instances of police abuse. And then you see in the hate crime statistics where we've had a dramatic uptick in violence, not only directed at communities of color, but synagogues and other places of worship. And then we have a climate crisis. And the common denominator in all four of these crises is failure leadership. There's absolute failed leadership from Donald Trump. He is in over his head. He lacks the character. He lacks every quality you need to lead a nation. He is just not up to the task. This is a president who sows division every single day. This is a president who, again, was one of the architects of the birther BS against Barack Obama. This is a president who doesn't want to bring us together. He thrives on chaos. His own people have said the more chaos, the more disorder, the better it is for us. We need leadership that can bring us together. We need leadership with a demonstrated track record in crisis management. That's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, in the depths of the Great Recession, was tasked with building back America, and build back they did. They inherited one of the worst messes since the Great Depression and left us with uninterrupted job growth, unlike anything we have seen in our nation's history. And unlike Donald Trump, I invite you to check my facts. The longest uninterrupted streak of private sector job growth in our nation's history, cutting the unemployment rate of African Americans by more than half, expanding opportunity, an aggressive program of investigating police departments, because we understand that civil rights is the unfinished business of America. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have the leadership it takes to make sure we build back better, to make sure we get a handle on the pandemic. They're going to listen to the scientists. They're going to listen to the other experts. And they're going to level with the American people, because unlike Donald Trump, they're not going to lie to people. We need Joe Biden because we need leaders with empathy and compassion. And you can rest assured that the Biden administration is going to reflect the diversity of America, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris embrace the diversity. They understand that our diversity is what makes America great and what will always make America great. And that is why it is so important. Our democracy as we know it is on the ballot. I've never seen an election in my lifetime where the differences between the two candidates were greater. And that is why it is so important for folks to get out there and vote. You can go to iwillvote.com to find out your polling location. We've got just a few days till the weekend, as I call it. And when our communities get out and vote, especially communities of color, Democrats win big. Why do you think they try to do all these voter suppression tactics? Because they know when we vote, they lose and we win. So let's get out there together. I think on the darkest nights, you see the brightest stars. And we've got so many stars out there. So let's make sure we get everybody out there to vote. Because when we do that, we can restore our democracy and we can make so many millions of lives better. Thanks a lot, Mark, for letting me join you. And remember, so much is on the ballot, including your health care. Yeah. We need Joe Biden. We need Kamala Harris.
Tom, thank you. Let me say congratulations in advance. Folks, we're marching toward victory. We pray. Pray with your feet as well. Get to those polls, get to those ballot boxes, check on your loved ones in all of these states, not just where you live, but everywhere around the country. And please go to iwillvote.com. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Mark. And have a great day. And thanks to all your listeners. Get out there and vote and get your friends out there to vote.
Thank you, man.
Take care, my friend.
Take care. Tom Perez, everyone. And don't forget to go to iwillvote.com. Special edition of Make It Plain here. We will be with you through the course of the weekend and Monday and Tuesday. You'll be hearing from some other important people during the course of the weekend. So be sure to keep checking us out on social media, if you will. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.